As we're going into this last week of October, I thought it was really time to embrace all of my favourite things about spooky season and Halloween. Alongside vampires, witches are definitely one of my favourite supernatural entities in spooky stories. I thought it seemed appropriate to have witches side my fate this week. I made a list of all my favourite fictional witches from Elphaba through to the Halliwell sisters through to Ursula, and I put them on a spinner wheel. This week I'm going to spin the wheel and then I'll have to think of a way to interpret that character to find a book on my TBR shelves. And I've already made my first spin, and as you can see, the character that the spinner wheel chose for me on this one was Sally and Gillian from Practical Magic. For Practical Magic as a movie, because it is definitely the movie version that I'm thinking of, I still haven't read the original novel. One of the major themes that I think comes through in that film is family. We have Gillian and Sally and the way they are dedicated to each other in childhood. They grow apart, they come back together, they sacrifice everything for each other. When it came to picking a book about family, the one that jumped off my sprawling seasonal TBR was KJ Charles' newest release, All of Us Murderers. This one definitely fits the family vibe, but in a slightly even more dysfunctional way than Practical Magic. I've read a couple of KJ Charles books in the past, and I have a whole ton of them on my TBR. In the past, I've really enjoyed the way she's able to build relationships between her characters, and also the way she really nails the vibe of her different historical settings. As far as I can tell, this one is a contemporary, but I think it'll be a really nice use of her historical writing kind of chops to use those tropes and skills and put it into a really gothic type of story. I think the descriptions and the drama of some of these historical settings will play really nicely even into a contemporary gothic adventure. Well, I was completely wrong about Oliver's murderers, so more fool me. This actually is a historical story, it's not a contemporary, but it is KJ Charles doing gothic fiction. So everything I said about her being able to use that historical skill set she has to write a really compelling gothic mystery, it still stands up. It's just that this is also historical. At the moment, I'm roughly, I think, at the 45%-ish mark. And now we have the entire Wickham family in the house. Secrets are starting to be revealed. Some secrets are starting to be revealed, both about the house and about their grandfather. And we're starting to get some suspicions about how he might have muddled some ghost stories about the house itself into his writing, or vice versa. It sort of depends whether we believe Zeb that someone is up to this mischief, or whether we believe Jessamine and Wynne, the wealthy uncle and the slightly flighty young heiress, and genuinely think there is a malicious ghost haunting the house, dispensing justice to evildoers. The first couple of chapters of the novel took me a little while to find my footing in. Still isn't quite what I had expected, but I think that maybe that's intentional. Zeb is our protagonist. He is, I think, the most grounded and realistic feeling of the characters. He sort of embodies the reader in a lot of ways, that slightly more modern outlook where he's just not willing to countenance that any of this can be supernatural. He thinks the competition for Jessamine's hand is slightly ridiculous, and he isn't interested in taking the Wickham blood money. Because we are sort of sitting on his shoulder, and around him are all these very hyper stylized characters: the wealthy but eccentric and isolated uncle with the money, Jessamine, who is running around the estate when we first meet her in a white nightdress, very much fitting all of those gothic heroine tropes. We have one of the cousins is the rake, the other is the very buttoned up, starched Victorian holdover. We have the slightly shrewish but ultimately adulterous wife. All of the characters are going to be fitting these very classic, very well-worn gothic tropes. It might feel a bit overdone, but I think that KJ Charles is a good enough writer that this is intentional. But by making Zeb feel more relatable and more grounded, I think this stops I think it stops the book having that bad Gothic fiction feel to it and instead lets us feel like we are sitting in the story but kind of gently able to poke fun at some of the ridiculous, overblown arguments, the secret passages, the writing on the walls that disappears, the follies in the garden. We're sort of able to just sit slightly above it all and marvel how these things are all so common in the genre are happening without feeling like we're totally expected to be in that same headspace. It gives that slight feeling that Zeb is the human character in a Muppets movie. And at the moment, I'm really enjoying it. All of Us Murderers was the second or third KJ Charles book I have read, but I think it's something different from their usual fare. Yes, it is historical, but it's got that Gothic vibe more than a just straight up historical fiction. And I think that's part of the fun of it. Yes, it's cliche and it's over the top, and some of the times it comes across as a little bit cheesy, but isn't that what Gothic fiction is? And I do feel like this book is Charles writing a love story to Gothic fiction, to Gothic tropes, to that sense of drama and overblown storytelling that we see in, for example, the comp title Crimson Peak. It's not taking itself too seriously and it's a lot of fun. And yes, there are some serious issues it looks at. Gothic fiction is full of really dark tropes, but there's something quite light in the way this is tackled that just makes it feel like a real romp and a really enjoyable story. The mystery is compelling. I was hooked. I wanted to know how it was going to play out. But at the same time, there was always that slight level of the ridiculous pulling you back and forth and making it very unclear who and or what was going on, because some moments the solution would seem like it was too ridiculous to be true, but then you'd remember that this is a very Gothic novel and some of the actual, the actual plot points are ridiculous because that's what happens in Gothic novels. Charles really throws a lot of those in there. We have the women, we have the recently discovered heiress running around the Gothic winding halls in her nightdress. We have mentions of incest. We have hidden tombs. We have debates over inheritance. We have these very grim servants that are just lurking around the place while our small family becomes whittled down further and further. And it's all just a really good time that plays right on that line of being slightly spooky without actually having any supernatural elements confirmed to you. For most of the novel, you're left to kind of wonder what is happening, and it's up to you whether or not you suspect there being some kind of ghostly presence or curse affecting the family. Something I did find really interesting in this, for all that it is quite light-hearted and fun, is that Charles seems very aware of what they're doing with these Gothic tropes. As I said, there's quite a lot of the classics, and something that pops up in a lot of Gothic literature and is poorly done, or was poorly done in the past, is the representation of mental health and neurodivergence. We have, the mad women in the attic. We have these, eccentric family patriarchs distributing their inheritances in ways that seem set up to turn people against one another. Charles uses or references those tropes because they're such staples of the genre and because they do add a lot of mystery to the novel. But she also gives us some really good up-to-date neurodivergent rep, in that the main character, Zeb, very clearly to a modern reader has ADHD. It's not referred to as that in the novel because of the time period. We don't talk extensively about symptoms or any kind of medical terminology, but we get to see the way his family view him and his past and his what they consider to be flightiness and unreliability and lack of focus. And we then get to see through Zeb's eyes and in the scenes he's with Gideon, who actually supports him, some of the mechanism he has in place to help him focus, to help him work with his ADHD. And I thought it was really nice that in a book that is using so many of these Gothic problematic tropes, we're also working in some actually good neurodivergent rep just to balance that out. So to go on to the next book, I loaded up my spinner wheel again and I let it pick me another witch. Then I actually got another set of sisters. This time we have the Halliwells from Charmed, and I thought that for this prompt, a great one to go with would then actually be sisters. So I have a book on my TBR for this month anyway that I think is the perfect fit. This is Cinder House by Freya Marske. It's a ghost story retelling of Cinderella, and I'm really interested to read it because I've loved Freya Marske's Last Binding trilogy, and I'm really excited what she's going to do in a much shorter format. Plus, fairy tales and retellings are my bag. So I'll let you know what I think of this one probably just at the end rather than midway through, and I'll see you when I have that update. So I did tell you that I wouldn't come to you with any waypoints on Cinder House. I didn't feel like it was worth it. It was a ghost story retelling of Cinderella, and I thought it did a really, really good job. Marske put a really good twist on the Cinderella story. She put her own mark on it without it being these retellings that changes too much. You could very much see all of the Cinderella elements happening. It just came at it from a different angle, and I really enjoyed it. I did think that although this was a ghost story, it wasn't going to be particularly dark. And overall, I stand by that. But the beginning was a lot darker than I thought. Ella and her father are both poisoned. And then Ella falls down the stairs. And that's what kills her right at the very, very start of the book. So she's been murdered by her stepmother, and then the house has a kind of sentience to it, and because it's angry at losing her father, it's angry at the end of their kind of bloodline, it holds on to Ella and traps her there in the house. She's part of it, which is why then her stepmother and stepsisters are able to really utilize her as a servant. She feels things like the dust in the house itching at her, so she's kind of motivated to be doing all their day-to-day tasks for them. Also, whenever she tries to put her foot down, we get to see the real cruelty of the stepsisters coming through. I did say that I picked this for the sisters prompt, and I think, again, that was really, really good. One of the stepsisters in particular is very important to the story. She's very much a driving antagonist. The stepsisters aren't just background characters here. But what they figure out is that the house is sentient and Ella is attached to it. One of the darker moments that was getting towards kind of horror-y territory was the idea that if they damage the house, if they hurt the house, then that hurts Ella as if it's part of her. So there's a scene where one of the stepsisters she's got like a little jigsaw and she's peeling bits off of the window frame, and it's because she's flaying Ella. And it did definitely give you that kind of horror, that inevitability, which I think is something that's always it can make something that's not super gory or super horror-y feel quite dark, is when you have the character's hopelessness and that they really can't do anything about the situation that they're in, always just amps up any kind of horror for me. And this, I definitely thought, had that. Ella's situation seems so dark, it seems so inevitable, that it leads you to that hopelessness and despair that makes it feel very gothic. It makes it feel very, very dark. As the book goes on, it gets lighter and it became more of a fantasy. I really enjoyed it. I really like casual queerness that's worked through, and the really unusual and unique relationship dynamic that we end up with, which had moments of true love and romance, but also of pragmatism and political intrigue or ingenuity or whatever you want to call it. I always struggle a little bit with novellas because I want it to have been developed more, but I think it was the perfect length. It's probably the perfect read for this October through January time of year. After finishing Cinder House, I loaded up my Witches spinner again. This time the spinner wheel gave me Willow Rosenberg from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Willow is a really interesting character, and there are lots of different angles I could have went down. I considered doing something with sci-fi because of her researcher tech angle in the earlier books. I thought about just doing something sapphic, but ultimately I decided to go with Willow's biggest moment is her grief, her retribution, her revenge, the Dark Willow storyline. So I really went for something that to me was about revenge and comeuppance. And the book that I picked is They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. I know almost nothing other than it has an academic setting and a bit of a getting back at someone. From what I've heard, I think it's maybe the kind of book you want to go into as blindly as possible. So I'm not looking into it too deeply. Ideally, it's going to have that revenge storyline. If it doesn't, it would still be an academic connection and just a smart girl at the start. I've been really wanting to read this ever since I finished the favourites, and it's actually going to tick off some boxes for me in terms of challenges, both in my year-long ones and in specifically the books I'm trying to read this month. I'm really hoping that this one's going to be a big hit, and that would make a really nice batch this week. So I did mean to get back to you in the midpoint maybe of They Never Learn, but honestly I was hooked and I had to read it all. I just didn't get around to filming in between. So it kicks off with a bang. I was hoping it was going to have a revenge plotline, but I wasn't sure, and if not, at least it had that academia. And boy does it have a revenge plotline. It actually is much more intense, much more thrillery, high stakesy than I thought it would be. I kind of took the revenge idea to be that she would be finding these professors' secrets and exposing them. She knew it would all... When it opened with the line about waiting for him to scream, I was like, oh, this isn't an investigative story where she's going to uncover their secrets and expose them to the light, finding justice, that kind of thing. This is Dexter. And obviously I had to kind of tweak my thoughts about how the book was going to go, but I had a lot of fun with it. I have to say I thought the book was very well constructed as a novel. We enter the book with two POVs, Carly and with Scarlett. Carly is a first year English student. She's just arrived at the college and she's struggling to fit in. She seems quite shy, quite reserved. She comes from a family where her father is abusive, her mother's maybe neglectful, and she's struggling to make connections. And she's just struggling to keep up with the social side of being at college. Then from Scarlett we have a woman who is very established in her career. She seems to be very in control. She is having an affair with a teaching assistant, but she seems very much to have her shit together. She also happens to be murdering men on the side whenever there is a man especially at the moment at this college, and he has committed a rape or an assault or something that she feels deserves punishment but he hasn't been punished for, because of the college wanting to save face and of that thing of we wouldn't want to ruin anyone's life with unfounded accusations, all that sort of, you know, rape culture thing. She then steps in and makes it look like either a suicide or an accident. There is that revenge fantasy going on. She's fun to watch. She's maybe a little bit extreme in that first half. I was a bit concerned because the colleague that she decides to go after next, Kinnear, it's implied that he's maybe been inappropriate with female students, but the main reason Scarlett seems to want him out of the picture is that both of them are going up for the same fellowship in London. When she decides to kill him, I did think it was a little bit much. You know, he hasn't done anything so wrong. We then have her going to his house at night, round about the middle of the book. This is the night she plans to kill him. As she's going past the house, she sees a girl that is described as we've seen Carly's friend Alison described just earlier. At that moment, I thought this is where the two storylines would combine, because I had been starting to wonder. And I thought maybe this is the moment. Maybe Alison is going to be assaulted, Carly is going to want to stop it, and she's going to get Scarlett's help somehow. Because up until that point there had been no overlap between the two POVs, and I was starting to wonder what their connection was. And I didn't see the twist coming. I did not see the twist in this coming at all. And maybe it was obvious and it was just me and I had blinkers on, but I didn't realise that we were in two different timelines, and that Carly is going to grow up to be Scarlett. And I was just thrilled with that, because it was such an unexpected twist. And maybe hints were there and I just didn't see them, but I really thought that Fargo had done a really good job of layering the two stories together so that it wasn't immediately obvious, but where once you make the connection, there are little moments that make sense. There are little references that make sense, and things that would have given it away, she's already planted the seeds for there to be explanations of those. For example, why the names are different, why they look different, why nobody else has recognised her. All of those seeds have actually already been planted once you know to look for them. So I thought that was really, really well done and really well thought out. I also thought it was really nice that at the midpoint, and I probably only noticed because I stopped there to jump on and record something, but the midpoint, which is where the two timelines come together, there's another echo happening in that the very first chapter, the very first line is about her waiting for someone to scream, and then that midpoint chapter opens with a scream as well. So I thought that that was a really nice kind of mirroring of the two parts of the story, while we've also kind of mirrored those two characters in them coming together. As a reader, we now realise it's the dual timeline rather than a dual POV. I just thought it was really nicely put together. I absolutely flew through the second half of the book. I was absolutely hooked. This is such an edge of your seat page turner. I needed to know what was going to happen in both timelines. For the most part, I found Carly's timeline less interesting than Scarlett's, but towards the end it really ramped up, and if anything had the more intense and more interesting conclusion. With both of them, I did feel the ending was just a little much for me. It felt a little bit too easy, both the resolutions. It felt a little bit too, not comedic, but a little bit too gung-ho for the novel that we'd had so far. Up to that point, it was, I know it's not believable, but there was a certain grounding to it, and in the last moments for both of them, I thought it just kind of stepped up again and became more like something like Ready or Not rather than How to Get Away with Murder. In that final moment for both Carly and Scarlett, they get away with a murder. In Scarlett's POV, she's helped by others, and I could see that working. Carly's POV, it felt like a little bit too close to the rah-rah girl power vibe. Up until then, I'd been able to follow Carly's logic. Yes, she's doing terrible things and she wants to do terrible things, but you can see her logic behind it. You can see how rape culture and the experiences she's lived, the men that have been in her life, you can see how that is kind of driven her to the point she's at, where that next step doesn't feel like such a big step. But in that very last moment of her timeline, I felt like it just went a bit too far. It didn't feel believable that that's the moment that snaps her. I just would have liked, maybe, I don't know whether that needed to be drawn out more or whether we needed to give her more incentive to take that leap. It just, the end just felt a little too wish fulfillment, revenge porn fantasy to me, which I don't have a problem with. There are some movies that do that brilliantly. But I just felt that for the academia setting, for what the book had been up to that point in terms of pacing and characterization, it felt a little bit too venturing into almost, you know, superhero territory. I wanted something that felt a little bit more grounded on that finale moment. But other than that, it was fantastic. It is, I would say, much more a thriller than I think I had something more of a literary dark academia vibe in my head going in, and this is just much more fun than that. I did have a great time with it, and I think I would rate it probably somewhere between a 4 and maybe a 4.5. It definitely cemented Fargo for me as an author to watch out for in the future. I really enjoyed this, I really enjoyed the favourites, and they were both such different books that it really gives me confidence that whatever she puts out next is going to be good, because she can clearly, you know, she has range. So in terms of my prompts and how they filled things, unfortunately none of these fit any of the Gothtober prompts, but I did manage to get one for each of them on This Witch Reads and Halloween-a-Thon. First was All of Us Murderers by KJ Charles. For the This Witch Reads, it fit the Skeletons prompt, and for Halloween-a-Thon it fit the Beetlejuice prompt. Then we had Cinder House by Freya Marske. For This Witch Reads, it fit Curse It, and for Halloween-a-Thon it fit Don't Fear the Reaper. Finally we have They Never Learn by Layne Fargo. This one fit The Bride of Frankenstein for Halloween-a-Thon and The Book of Life for This Witch Reads. For my Halloween-a-Thon watching, I have been really just focused on one thing. I have been rewatching seasons 1 and 2 of Interview with the Vampire. My next reading project is a whole stack of vampire books, so I really wanted to rewatch Interview before I did that. I mean, when I say rewatch, this must be the 5th or 6th or 10th time. It's up there in the amount of times I've rewatched the show, so it's very much a comfort watch now, and I'll probably get through it fairly quickly, but that's been very much what my watch time has been focused on, along with some more of the sprints and things that Kelsi has been running. So this week I had a fairly good stack. A few of them weren't exactly what I thought they were going to be. In fact, I think all of them weren't exactly what I thought they were going to be. But I did have a great time. I don't think there was a bad book here, and I really enjoyed them all. They were all very much fitting that Gothic trope that I'd been looking for, kind of by happenstance. I know I put a lot of Gothic books on my big general Halloween TBR, and Gothic tends to be the horror-y genre that is my favourite, so it's no surprise, but it is funny that these three just ended up in this video together. So I really hope that you have enjoyed watching I really hope that you might have found one that you want to try in here. I'd recommend them all. If you are interested in any of these, either you've read it or you are now interested in reading it, please let me know in the comments. I always really like to hear if there's any overlap in our reading, or if you've been influenced to pick something up that you might not have otherwise. As always, likes on the video, subscriptions on the channel, and emojis in the comments if you have nothing else to say are massively, massively appreciated. And I really hope that I'm going to see you in my next video. Goodbye.